So I get to spend another hour or two messing with this thing yesterday morning, and took some notes and figured I would just share some of my ass hattery and rabbit holing. Um, I'm an idiot, but the basic premise is I wanted to see the speaker work. And first thing that I didn't know, or the last thing that I didn't know, uh, the, this is an amp right here, and it's actually a completely separate circuit. So you can power that with up to 12 volts, which is going to give you a pretty good, pretty loud speakers. I powered it with 5 volts, so I basically just it's on pin 1. So I just moved one of my 5-volt pins from pin 3 over to pin 1, and that was something I didn't know, and I found that because there was optional. Where the hell did they go? Yeah, right here. So pin 1, optional 12 volt in, 12 volt for speaker driver. So it explains a lot. I think basically because you've actually got the xmos chip, which has a DAC and is plugged up to an amp, your volume control would be there, which kind of makes sense why we assign GPIO pins to tell that thing to change volume, you know, because it just sits on the USB port. Anyway, I'm not gonna act like I know all this stuff. But before that, I had completely bastardized this thing. First I was just trying to get Pulse to run in system mode, but it was being a little bitch, and in fact it was getting killed, and I couldn't figure out why I was getting killed or who was killing it, and turns out I wasn't the only one that has stumbled across this kind of crap. So I found this weird article, and this dude, it was a nice article, but he ended up having to install perf, which is a special module. You basically can load I think that's what this is. You can load a kernel module that in this case is looking at signal handlers, but you could do it arbitrarily for anything just about, and I'm pretty sure that's what perf is. I haven't messed with it, but anyway, then he wrote like a test program, and sure enough, it was some real-time kernel thing, and it was being smacked down, and the sig kill, you didn't know where it came from, you know, unlike if something's out of memory, you're told it's out of memory, but in this case it was being smacked down and you didn't know why. So I had kind of punted because I'm not running desktop software, so I don't want, you know, I don't want the GUI to have to be logged into or whatever to enable Pulse, and I couldn't enable Pulse as me, and I couldn't enable Pulse on the system because for whatever reason. Anyway, so I removed all that shit, and I just apt-get destroyed it, and then I pretty much installed back the ALSA stuff, which is kind of evil, and then the second card, you know, there was something somewhere that keeps the non-HDMI sound card from being probed first. So it's always the number 1 card, and this is basically what you can do to test if it's working, regardless of what you're running in terms of sound stuff. And I wasn't getting any errors here, and same with MPlayer, I wasn't getting any errors. And then, like, while I was fishing around, I fixed the defaults, which I'm assuming you would do this in pulse too, if you're keeping that, like to specify this, the second sound card is the default card, although this is supposed to be a 1 because it's the second one. And I verified that this thing reset, which this is just a service that restarts the xmos chip using the same IO that you could use with GPIO. And so I was all confused. There wasn't any errors, and then I realized you have to provide it. You have to provide it power. So anyway, I threw the power on. Everything worked great. That was my first derp. And so now, like here, this is actually rendering over the network. So, oh shit, I fucked that up. Let's see, I just did this a second ago. Let's try it here. Let's just make sure we got exported. That's stupid. Yeah, so you can forward your display back. So yeah, this is over the network, and performance is pretty good. The audio is a little choppy because of network latency, and then that's actually where the timing is in that particular thingy. But then other stuff, like some royalty-free music. Yeah. And then this is a 3 ohm speaker. I gave away I had some 8 ohm, Onkyo speakers that I could have tested with, but I gave them away today to some kid. So I ended up using this 3 ohm speaker out of a BMW. Shit, what was my other derp? Oh, yeah. So the Wi-Fi module gets hot, and I kept rebooting this thing, and I kept not turning it off. So I was like, oh man, I'm gonna disable that thing. And dude, that was really stupid too. And I tried Linux, and it's not often I have to do a lot of blacklisting, and I know there's different ways you could disable it, but my plan was just to blacklist the kernel module and call it done, not figure out what driver was loading it, or how it was getting loaded, or if systemd did. Like I don't, especially with Ubuntu. I haven't run Ubuntu in a while, but so these were the 3 modules that I wanted to blacklist, and I'd reboot and they weren't getting blacklisted. And then I tried blacklisting the 802.11 module too. And if you don't know Linux real well, drivers aren't really a thing. What you end up having are modules that get loaded into the kernel. So a lot of your stuff is either already built into the kernel, or you specify a module that the kernel then loads, but it essentially becomes part of the kernel. So it's a little bit different flow than drivers. But anyway, blacklisting didn't work, and I could have added it, I could have blacklisted it in the kernel. Like you can edit the boot parameters and blacklist it there, but it's so fucking stupid. And I didn't know Linux didn't blacklist shit when you told it to blacklist shit. Like I don't know when that happened. And but apparently a blacklist will only blacklist the module if something else isn't dependent on it. So at some point that was a decision that was made. So here's the actual way to blacklist. You install the module as bin false. And I've never had to do that in my life, but that is what fixed disabling my stupid Wi-Fi. So those were my 2 derp moments. And at this point I may end up just doing a fresh install, and just going through the process again. I may keep the desktop just auto logging in or something, and not I'm not sure. but it was all a little bit kludgy, and I guess yeah, there's not a ton of support around this thing, so you're kind of on your own to like try to hack your way through stuff. And I guess the only other thing that I found that was interesting, and I still haven't messed much with this, but there was this source file, or this is something you can source in, but it's pretty interesting. It's essentially self-documenting because it tells you all the GPIO connections for everything. And in fact, like here's the volume up pin and the volume down pin. I don't know what handles this out the box. I haven't done a lot of GPIO on Linux. I've always done it with not computers. But you're basically poking a spot, and it does stuff. So anyway, this tells you a lot of that, and there's other docs that tell you a lot of that. But part of my audio woes, was I was testing things, and there's a few thingies that are running. Yeah, all these dudes. Yeah, Atomic Pi hold mic service. Like, I think that's just tickling the GPIO pin that determines whether you record using the mic input or whether you record what sound is being played, if that makes sense. And then this hold xmos service, that actually pokes and restarts the xmos chip. And so part of my testing was, I just like to make sure stuff wasn't all freaked out, is I restarted this Atomic Pi. Oh, that might take a while. Yeah, tab completion. Shouldn't have done it. Oh, I did it again. You son of a bitch. Yeah, it's pretty slow, but tab completion's pretty heavy. Xmos blah. I did it again. You'd think it would be quicker. Anyway, I restarted that. You look in dmessage, and you can see, sure enough, it disconnected, and then it got rediscovered on the USB bus. So anyway, I suspected everything was working. But what was my point? My point is there's a ton more to discover with the GPIO stuff. There's some Python examples to follow. The sound for me appears to work fine. I even got like my Cepstral stuff.
This is a test.
I don't know if you can hear that.
This is a test.
So all my text-to-speech stuff is working. And that's the x86 version, not the ARM version. So that's kind of cool. And yeah, I guess I'm just sharing my derps, man, because computers are hard. So trying to think if there's anything else. I got one of these powered things on the way. One of the dudes that connects onto here, just because I don't want to run these little wires forever. And I was digging around looking for some Wi-Fi antennas, and I found one. And and then this speaker, if I didn't already say it, this is a 3 ohm speaker. So that's kind of the worst case scenario in terms of, an amp driving it. Like if you put an 8 ohm speaker on there, it's going to have a lot more ability to drive it. So I suspect this thing gets pretty loud, like maybe 5 watts ish or something. Was there anything else in my bullshit of bullshit? Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, that's it. Have fun with your little atomics. Let me know what kind of stuff you're working on if you're one of those kind of people that works on stuff.